I'm Sam.
And this is Gabe.
And this is Coaster Wars.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coaster Wars podcast, where today we are torturing our hosts once again.
Yes, if anybody is new to the podcast, we are doing a question everything episode. Basically, in these episodes, normally speaking, I would pose questions to Gabe, and he is not allowed to use the internet. But instead, in this episode, Gabe gets to torture me. And I would like to shout out our listener, Desi, who recommended this episode. I love all of our listeners, but I don't like you right now.
That's a little aggressive, don't you think?
I said didn't like. It's not permanent. I bet she's a great person. I'm just not a fan of the suggestion.
Yeah, this will be a fun little episode. I have some just generic questions, some very, very generic questions. And then depending on what time we have, we can dive into some more aggressive questioning. But most of these are just general roller coaster lingo and knowledge. I tried to make it very general. So like if I ask you a question, it's not going to be like a super specific question. Okay. It's just more like general words, some of the stuff that we use in episodes, as well as just like differentiating between different like phrases and stuff, because there is sometimes we'll just drop a word or something like that and don't really explain what it means or what it is, just because me and you know what we're talking about, but maybe our listeners don't.
Yes. All right.
Okay, so my first question to you is, what is a home park? We talk about it all the time on this episode, that our home park is Six Flags Great America, but what is the actual definition of a home park?
I guess the home park would probably be the park that I will not say it is the one that is closest to you, because we specifically in Wisconsin have several parks that are closer, but we do not consider our home park. I think a home park is probably the one that you go to the most and you maybe have had a lot of firsts at, and is the park that is near and dear to your heart, the one that you've been going to maybe ever since you were a kid, or even if you maybe didn't start riding roller coasters until you were older. I guess it would just be kind of the one that feels like home for you. So for us, like Gabe said, that's Six Flags Great America. The parks that we have closer to us are Mount Olympus down in Wisconsin Dells, and then it technically has a roller coaster, so Bee Beach up in Green Bay, but we've always gone down to Six Flags Great America ever since we were kids, ever since we were tall enough to start riding rides there. I was about to say, I think I had my first upside down coaster there, but I think I might have actually had that down in Florida.
Yeah, I couldn't actually tell you what my first coaster was. I'd have to go look and see if I can figure it out. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say that. I would definitely agree with that. A home park is definitely a park you probably visit the most. It's not necessarily the closest. The other thing I will say too is traditionally, like what I call a home park is the one that we have our season pass through.
Oh, so, yeah, that too.
Obviously, because we wanted to get the all parks passport, you still have to pick what's your quote unquote closest home park. So that's why we bought ours through Great America.
Yes. Basically, the way that works is you're buying like a season pass for the park of your choice, and then the all parks passport is like an add-on for that season pass. Is basically how it works.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. What else do I got here? I don't have them in order. I should have put them in order. Here's another one. What is a roller coaster credit, and how do you count credits? So like if you were to quote unquote secure credit, how do you count that? Also, like, obviously there's a few weird ones like racing coasters and stuff like that. So what is a credit and how do you count roller coaster credits?
Okay, so first of all, a credit is when you ride a new coaster for the first time. So your credit count is then a count of the how many unique roller coasters you've ridden. Like me and Gabe said, when we go back to our home park, when we go to Six Flags Great America, when we re-ride all the rides that we've already ridden, those don't count as credits. When we go to a new park and we've never ridden a coaster and we get on it for the first time, that increases our credit count. Now, if we want to get into the logistical side of how to count credits, you can either just manually keep track yourself, or me and Gabe actually use an app called Log Ride that can log check-ins to parks. You can log how many times you've ridden a coaster, but then you can also just log your credit count, and it'll tell you how many roller coasters you've ridden. Now, when it comes to racing coasters, I don't know if there's any like specific set of rules, but I think what me and Gabe have agreed on is if the sides are clones of each other, basically if they follow the exact same route, we do not count each side as a unique roller coaster. So you will only get one credit even if you've ridden both sides. Now, if they're mirrors of each other, if they differ in any way, we call those racing coasters or dueling coasters, sorry, and we count each side as a different credit because it has a different layout. And in this same vein too, I'd also like to talk about, I forget what it's called, the racing coaster at Kennywood.
I think
So
it's just
to
called Racer.
okay, to get the credit on that coaster, I forget, Gabe, you know the technical term for it, but basically when you ride through one side of the coaster, you then end up on the other side in the other station. So to get a credit on that coaster, you actually have to ride both sides, and then that only counts as one credit, which is
Yes.
that's
I
crazy.
I traditionally count both sides of a racing coaster as 2 credits. So like American Eagle is 2 credits,
Okay.
Gemini would be 2 credits, the Racer at Kings Island would be 2 credits, the Racer 75 would be 2 credits. That's why we made sure we rode both sides.
Yep.
And I always did because even though they're quote unquote identical layouts, one's like turning left and turning right. You know what I mean? So they are
Yeah.
still kind of different. Like you said, a coaster like the Racer, it's called a Mobius Loop coaster. Probably the most famous example would be what's it called? It's the RMC at Magic Mountain. Oh God,
Is it
Twisted Colossus. That's what it's
yeah.
called. And that coaster is another example of a Mobius loose coaster. The difference between that one and like the Racer at Kennywood is that one there's only one station, so you
Oh.
automatically complete both sides of the layout.
Okay.
Where the Racer, you actually physically have to get loaded on each station to ride the entire layout of the coaster,
Yep.
if that makes sense. But yeah, they're called
Also,
Mobius Loop coasters.
that's a cool name. Also, want to point out too, if you use log ride, it does. If you're riding a racing coaster, it'll specify like the blue side or the red side, which is
Yes,
really
yes.
nice.
Yep. So then that leads, I guess, since you already kind of touched about it a little bit, what is the difference between a dueling coaster and a racing coaster? Because they are different. They're
Yes.
very similar, but they are different.
So what I think the difference between them is a racing coaster, they will both have really similar layouts. I say really similar because we consider American Eagle a racing coaster, and that has like one or two airtime hills that are different on each side, but they have really similar layouts, and a lot of the times the trains are next to each other. I feel like dueling coasters will have sections that crisscross, and the two sides are very different. And the one that I always think of because it was my favorite was Dueling Dragons, that unfortunately is now a defunct coaster. And when I remember riding it, it was the blue side was the loopy side, and the red side was the corkscrew side. And the red side was a lot more intense, and the blue side was a lot, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but it was definitely tamer. Like if you liked an intense roller coaster
Yeah.
experience, you rode the red side. That's
Yeah,
what I
I
would
would
call the
agree with that.
difference.
I would basically say like a racing coaster is what you would say like a mirrored layout or very, very similar layout. The American Eagle's kind of a special one because of the way it returns. So
Mm-hmm.
like the old racing coasters like Racer or like Racer 75, the layouts are completely identical. It's just the only difference is the direction you're turning. That's it.
Yep. Yeah.
Where American Eagle does have some subtle differences on the return trip when they crisscross, but like a dueling coaster has significant and notable differences in layout. Even like Lightning Racer at Hershey Park, that I would consider a dueling coaster because there's points where you guys are going in like complete opposite directions and the
Yeah.
crisscrossing is completely different. A coaster like Gemini, that's a good example of a racing coaster because the
Yeah.
layouts are very, very similar. So yeah, that I would agree with what you said there.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, since we're getting into coaster differences, I have a few. Let's see. What is the difference between a dark ride and an indoor roller coaster?
Ooh, okay. I like this a lot. So, indoor coasters are literally to me just coasters that are indoor. The perfect example of this would be Flight of Fear at Kings Island. or King's Mini, whatever, which one you want to take. But basically, they just built a giant building and put it around this coaster, and you fly into it, and it's very dark in there. You can't see where it's going. It is cool because it adds the darkness element to a roller coaster. And like, obviously, too, they have to build this coaster to fit inside said building. So we like to say that Flight of Fear is a spaghetti ball because you just twist in and out of itself
Yes.
all over the place. With a dark ride, you have like theming elements that help create almost like a story, I guess. So I feel like there's animatronics, there's mannequins, there's TV screens, there's like any different tools they could use for theming this ride to help create the experience. And I can think of so many examples of this. I think one of my favorites is the Mummy ride down in Florida again. And I mean, it's at a Universal park, so like, of course, their theming is going to
See,
freaking
now
go out the window.
that's an interesting one because that's actually a combination of the two.
Yes. So with that guy, it has slower sections that you kind of like trail through, and it's got the theming elements, and then it's got like a really intense roller coaster section. And the favorite part that I always love to talk about with that one is you go into a room and it looks like the end of the ride, and then the mummy comes in and scares you, and then the ceiling lights on actual fire. It is not a screen. You could feel the heat from it, and then you get launched backwards, which is really cool. Another dark ride I can think of would
The one that
be
pops into my head all the time is the ET ride.
yeah. Oh,
Yes.
that thing is so much fun. Oh, if you are down, is it still open? Didn't we think it
I
closed?
have no idea. And that was a Universal ride, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't
well,
know. Or Disney. Is that Disney or Universal?
I'm pretty sure it's Universal. I'm
But
pretty sure it
yes,
was
I think it's still there. I have honestly
okay.
no idea. It's been so long since we've been down there.
I know. So, but what's really fun about that ride, just to like tell a little story about mine and Gabe's family, we went down there with a big group of us one time. And when you go into the ride, they quote unquote have to give you your galactic passport and you have to give them your name. And then at the end of the ride, whoever's in like your car, they say your names. So one time we all decided to do rhyming names. And we literally had the ET animatronic going, "Thank you, Jerry, Terry, Mary, Carrie, Harry." And it was freaking
Yes.
hilarious. It's just a stupid thing to do. Other dark rides that I think of Black Diamond. Is that one was at Knoebels, wasn't it?
Yep, I would say that's an actual indoor coaster though.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's a very slow paced one, but that is actually an indoor coaster.
Okay. Exterminator at whatchamacallit at Kennywood is definitely an indoor coaster.
Yes. Traditionally, when I say the difference between a dark ride and an indoor coaster is the rate of speed that you travel through the ride. And
Oh, okay.
also, a dark ride is going to be fully motorized through the entire layout
Oh, I
of the
suppose.
ride.
Okay.
See, where an indoor coaster or a combination of the two will have sections like the Mummy. It has sections where it is an actual coasting train. You get what I'm
Okay,
saying?
that
It's not
makes sense. Yeah,
always under power, where most dark rides are under power throughout the entire layout.
that makes sense.
Yes, a
So,
dark ride doesn't actually coast, is what I'm
okay.
trying to say.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Do you want a more complicated question or do you want another general one?
It's a too complicated one.
Let's do a complicated one. What is the difference between a classic roller coaster and a modern roller coaster? Now, this is kind of a gray area question. That's why I'm saying it's a little more complicated. I just want to see what your take is on it.
Well, I think it would depend on what kind of coaster you're talking about. So I could talk about Woodies, and we use that time with a lot of time with Woodies. We talk about the difference between a modern Woody and kind of a classic Woody. And I think with classic Woodies, we're thinking of the older guys built in the 70s and 80s, and even like the few that are still surviving from the 20s and 30s and stuff, where they're pretty generalized layouts. They're out and back, and they kind of focus primarily on airtime. And even more than that, a lot of the times that focus is floater airtime. There are ones that have ejector moments, and we talk about with classics, a lot of times you get lateral forces, but I don't think that was a purposeful thing. I think that was we didn't do banking yet. So if you have any kind of turn with any kind of speed in it, you just consequently get laterals because it doesn't have banking. So
Yes.
with modern woodies, I think of the perfect examples like the first modern one that me and Gabe ever rode, which was Mystic Timbers, which was a focus on pacing, more ejector airtime, really mixing up the forces, giving you a much more intense experience than you might get on some other woodies. So I think with modern woodies, there's a little bit more thought into the forces and the differentiating said forces and giving you a super intense thrilling experience. I also think of El Toro. We could also talk about like just building methods in general with El
Yeah.
Toro because of how it's built. It's laser cut in a factory and then brought to the site and just kind of like built together like Legos, which is really cool. With steel coasters, I feel like that is a little bit harder to define. Well, first of all, I think we can throw launch coasters kind of you can't really call that classic because that's such a new technology, I feel like.
Yeah.
Um so I would say launch coasters are definitely a modern phenomenon. So if it's a launch coaster, but even then though too, you could still be like, well, this is kind of more of a classic launch coaster with like King Dakar and Top Thrill on how it's just a top hat. And a lot of launch coasters will do that. They will have like a top hat, but then you also have something like I feel like Max Force doesn't have a top hat, does it?
Not exactly. I mean, it kind of
No.
does, but it's not a
Yeah.
traditional top hat by any means.
Yeah. So I guess that's maybe where the line is for launch coasters. For steel coasters, I feel like again, well, no, not really, because we have aero ones that are over 200 feet. I was going to talk about hypers, and I feel like a B&M hyper is kind of like a traditional or a classic hyper, but that doesn't really have anything to do with age, I guess, because I think of Phantom's Revenge, and it's one of the most unique hypers. And then in the same park is also an SNS hyper. So for me, it's harder to define for steel coasters, I think.
Yeah. So I actually, and this is kind of why I put this question in there, because I have like three time periods. So I have what's called the classic time period. I have the Coaster Wars time period, and then you have the post Coaster Wars time period, which is what I
Okay.
consider the modern time period. So
Okay.
basically, you have the classic time period, which is the anything before we'll say 1985. You're talking Schwarzkopf, Arrow, like these kind of
Yeah.
older janky coasters. Same thing for Woodies. You're talking like Din Corporation or Pete DC or the old CCI or even like some of the very very early GCI coasters.
Yep.
But even then, once you start talking about like GCI and Gravity Group, that's definitely modern Woodies. But you're talking about these older, kind of like simpler ways to build and design roller coasters, stuff like that. And then when I talk about the coaster wars, that's when you start bringing in manufacturers like B&M and Intamin, and they start kind of like ramping up. But then the coaster wars era is definitely the time period from like Magnum XL to King Ka. Because King
Yep.
Ka was really like the last true coaster of the Coaster Wars. And
Yeah.
then when you can see that change in mindset is with Maverick. Maverick is the start of the modern roller coaster era because that's when the thought process changed from let's just build the biggest, baddest, fastest thing we possibly can to like, wait a minute. If we actually just focused on the layout of the roller coaster itself, instead of just how big and tall and fast it is, you
Mm-hmm.
could still create a world class roller coaster. Maverick is that turning point for
Yep.
Intamin and for the roller coaster world to say, hey, we can build a 100-foot coaster and it's still going to be a top 5 roller coaster on the planet. So,
Yes.
like,
And you
that's what I
definitely
consider the modern time period. It's about from 2006 later, is what I would call the modern roller coaster era.
okay. I was gonna say you definitely see that too, even in the Woodies, because the Voyage, I believe, is like 2006, isn't it?
Somewhere
Somewhere
in there,
around
yeah.
there. Yeah, I was gonna say it's somewhere in the 2000s that we get Hades and we get the Voyage. Uh, Twisted Timbers is not Mystic Timbers. Sorry, is 2017, isn't it? This is an
Something
early
like
one.
that. Yeah. Nope. It's a later one.
To say it's not that early. I don't know why I thought 2017. Moral of the story, though, even Woody's like being built in the same time period that you're talking about as the start of the modern age is when we see a lot
Yeah.
of these different kinds of Woody coasters. We could even throw RMC in the mix. I know they didn't start building coasters until 2011, but they've kind of like really added to this modern age of roller coasters.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. All right. So I have a couple more questions regarding roller coasters. I'll give you an easier one,
okay,
and
thank you.
then we'll kind of dive back into some more complicated ones. So this is something that we talk about all the time on our podcasts,
Hmm.
but we haven't truly I mean, we've talked about it a little bit here and there, but I just wanted to really set some definitions so that people understand what is the difference between a favorite roller coaster and the best roller coaster.
Okay, this is very easy to explain.
Yes.
So, especially with me and Gabe, because as much as we like to agree on what is the best coaster, we like different things in roller coasters. And the perfect example of this would be how much I love inverts, and Gabe is not a huge fan of inverts. But anyways, to get back into the actual question, the best coaster is what you can objectively say has is just better than everything else in the park. And I guess what we would define that as it's not just a single thing. It's something that has really great pacing, has great forces, has a good mixture of those forces. I think I'm trying to think of a park that like has a clear standout best, and I think I would think about Hershey Park because there's a lot of really good roller coasters in there, but Wildcats Revenge objectively is the best coaster at that park. It has the best, like I said, best pacing, best forces, best mixture of those forces. But when we talk about a favorite coaster, it's literally exactly as the word describes. It's just the one that we kind of like the best, and that has more to do with just what we personally like in a roller coaster. I think the best coaster at a park could slightly be influenced in that, but you try to be a little bit more objective about it. Where with your favorite coaster, you're like, well, that one was just the one that I liked the best. It was like when we went to Kings Island for the very first time. The Beast obviously is not the best coaster at that park, but it was definitely my favorite. I freaking loved that coaster. It was what started my love of terrain coasters. I even bought a hat for it, which that was like my first piece of roller coaster merchandise that I ever bought. But it definitely is not the best coaster at that park.
Yeah,
Which
I have three examples written down for this question. The
okay,
first example was Great America.
okay,
So American Eagle. Oh my God, we love that coaster. We have so many memories. It's definitely one of our favorite coasters there. But
yeah,
like objectively speaking, Batman is better.
yeah,
Raging Bull is better. Goliath is better. But they're all better coasters or best coasters. But like American Eagle, that's our favorite sometimes. For
oh.
me, it is. A lot of times when we go there, it's my favorite coaster to ride. It really is.
To interject
Um,
real quick, a lot of the times what we'll do is we'll make multiple circuits of Great America, but if we end up staying until park close, we will run back to American Eagle and marathon that thing for like 5 times at the end of the
oh
night.
yeah. Oh yeah,
So,
definitely. The second example is the one that you used already, which was Hershey Park.
mhm,
Wildcats Revenge is pretty much undoubtedly the best coaster at that amusement park. But my favorite ride there is actually Sky Rush.
yep.
Like I just absolutely love Sky Rush. I love Hypers. I love Intamins. And it's just such a good ride experience that I just love so much. Even though it's not the best, it doesn't have inversions, it doesn't have the intensity that Wildcats Revenge has. It doesn't really even have the pacing that Wildcats Revenge has,
Yeah.
but it's still my favorite. And then the third example that I used is King's or not King's Dominion, I'm sorry, Busch Gardens Williamsburg.
Mhm.
You have Pantheon, which is probably undoubtedly the best coaster at that amusement park. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, I thought it was slightly disappointing, but you absolutely loved it.
I did.
But like my favorite roller coaster there is the Loch Ness Monster. I
Yeah.
love that ride so much. And your favorite coaster there is probably Verbolten.
Yep.
So like even though the best coaster there is undoubtedly Pantheon, our favorite coaster is not Pantheon. So that
Yes.
was kind of like the third example that I used for that question.
Yes. Also would like to point out, I don't know if we mentioned this because I don't know that we talked too much about Busch Gardens Williamsburg. We are, or I shouldn't say we, Gabe's been there before, and then this was his second time back. He's pretty sure they updated the theming or like fixed some of it or something when we rode Loch Ness
Yeah,
Monsters.
they did a full retrack. They did a full retrack on the
Yeah.
coaster, and then they updated some of the theming as well.
It's just like a little plug there. Go ride Loch Ness Monster, guys.
Yeah, I love that coaster. It is so much fun. It's a piece of history. It's
Yeah.
one of the few arrows out there that you could probably ride a couple of times before having to take a break from it. Like
Yeah.
I just love that ride so much.
Anyways.
All right, since we're on the topic of differences, Sam, what is the difference between a full circuit roller coaster and a shuttle coaster?
Ooh. So I guess the way I'm going to explain this is by showing examples. So the shuttle coaster that I always think of is the intimate impulse coasters where it has a spike and you go up said spike and then you come down and you go backwards through it. I guess a shuttle coaster, you end up having to go backwards at some point to end up back in the station, where with a full circuit roller coaster, you have like a circle that you basically complete and you leave the station in one side, then you come back in the other side, I guess. Um, I think, did we say that Top Thrill is technically, because I thought it maybe switched to being a shuttle coaster because it has the swing launch, but you're like, it's still technically a full circuit because you go all the way
Yes,
around.
it is still so the Top Thrill 2 is a full circuit coaster, yes.
Yeah, so I feel like the easiest way to explain it is a full circuit coaster, you do a circle to get around the whole track, or with a shuttle coaster, are there examples that aren't swing launches though?
Of shuttle coasters?
Yeah.
The boomerangs are shuttle coasters.
Oh, okay. Not true for all of them, but you go through a portion of the layout twice, I would say.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm trying to think. The giant boomerang that you rode at, was that
Silverwood.
Silverwood?
Yeah.
That would be a shuttle coaster.
Okay.
In Vertigo at Kings Island is a shuttle coaster.
Okay.
So the true definition of a shuttle coaster is it has a distinct two endpoints to the track.
Oh,
You
okay.
get
That
what
makes
I'm
sense.
saying? So
Yes,
like that's why
100%.
Top Thrill doesn't fall into that description because it only
Yes.
has one distinct endpoint. Now,
Yes, that makes sense.
a shuttle coaster has two distinct endpoints, and it does have to traverse part of the layout twice
Okay.
in order for it to be considered a shuttle coaster.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I think the only one that breaks that definition would be Switchback
Oh, okay.
because it doesn't really have two distinct endpoints.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the layout. That one's kind of a weird one. That's kind of a very, very weird one. Yes.
Yes.
Let's see. I do have one more. I have two more about coaster type. So, at what point does a kiddie coaster become a family coaster? And at what point does a family coaster become a thrill coaster? Now, I did put in parentheses, there is no direct definition.
So I feel like part of it is just the size of the coasters. Obviously, kiddie coasters are going to be very small roller coasters. Family coasters are going to be a little bit bigger, but I don't think I've ever really seen a family coaster. And like, of course, there might be exceptions to this, but I don't think I've seen a family coaster that's over 100 feet. They might be around 100 feet and then going above that. But we can't say it's just size because we can look at Maverick, which is only, 95 feet tall. So I
100
think,
exactly.
oh, 100 exactly. Sorry. I think the biggest thing that kind of changes those is the intensity of the roller coaster. So obviously kiddie coasters are very, very not intense roller coasters. And then family coasters are a little bit more intense. And I think the name kind of implies they're designed with the thought of we got to make something that kids aren't going to be scared of, but would maybe also at least entertain adults and maybe older kids that would ride it with younger kids. I feel like kiddie coasters a lot of the time are like, I'm thinking of Taxi Jam for some reason. We didn't even ride it. A lot of times we won't ride kiddie coasters. We'll ride family coasters, but not the kiddie ones. So I feel like that the biggest definer is intensity. And with kiddie coasters, there's no intensity at all. Family coasters, it's just intense enough to be not scary for kids, but slightly entertaining. I'm thinking of Big Bad Wolf, The Wolf's Revenge. That is a great family coaster.
Yes,
Honestly,
definitely.
when we rode it, or at least me, I was thoroughly entertained. I thought it was a cool little coaster. It was a lot of fun. I even think of Snoopy's Soapbox Racer. That to me, that's kind of like on the line. That's really kind of on the line. I think I would go to the edge of calling it a family coaster. I think I would call Good Gravy at Holiday World. That's definitely a family coaster to me
Yes,
because it does
definitely.
have, yeah, it's big enough. It has a vertical spike that could be a little bit scary, but they're generally speaking not very intense experiences. And sometimes they even have better theming than some of the other
Oh
rides
yeah.
just because they want to entertain the kids. But yeah, I think the defining factor there would be intensity of the roller coaster.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely agree
Yay.
with that. All right, one more of
Okay.
the roller coaster differences. What is the difference between a launch coaster and a lifting coaster? And why do some coasters have both? It's kind of strange. And then, kind of to add into it, what is the purpose of these elements in general? So, of a launch, of a lift, of any kind of propulsion element.
Okay. So to start off with the differences, a launch coaster is one that uses some kind of propulsion system to literally launch you forward. I cannot say that it's from a standstill because not every coaster does that. But generally speaking, these happen on flat pieces of track. So with a lift hill, you are brought up a lift that brings you, that's literally elevated. A lot of times, if you're looking at a lift hill from the side, they look like triangles. And so it'll bring you up. A lot of the times they use chains, but there are a few that are cable lifts. And it'll bring you to the top, and then that lift disengages and you're dropped down a drop. Now, the purpose of both of these is in what the definition of a roller coaster basically is that they coast. So the purpose of both is to get you up to speed enough to make it through an entire layout. Now, I will say with launches, we do have something we call swing lifts. And basically, it'll launch you forward, you'll roll backwards, get a backwards launch, and then be launched forward up to that top speed. So, what was the second part of the question, Gabe?
Why do
The
some coasters have both?
I think that is just a case of mixing up forces and getting it to work. Well, see, I know it's technically a launched coaster, but you could even think of Maverick, where the first launch launches you up a hill and then you drop down, and then the second launch on the roller coaster is a traditional just straight launch and it launches you into the layout. I think launches could serve two purposes. They can either serve to increase your speed if it is needed at some point in the roller coaster, or you have something. This one doesn't have a lift hill, but some roller coasters will have backwards launches. So maybe it is used to get you going backwards on a roller coaster. Some coasters have multiple launches, like I said with Maverick. I think part of it is to keep up the speed on some roller coasters. Some of it's just to keep it more thrilling because if you're moving faster, it's going to make it a more intense experience. And then, yeah, the backwards launch is really fun too. So,
Yeah. My favorite one is actually the one that I was going to put down as my example is Powder Keg. And then I realized that you haven't ridden Powder Keg yet. But Powder
no.
Keg has a air launch and a lift hill. And basically the reason for that is because the launch is the initial propulsion for the coaster layout, but it
Okay.
sends you down into a valley and the coaster doesn't have enough
Oh.
speed to get out of the valley. So the way they do that is they drag you up a lift hill, you go down one more drop, and then you're in the final brakes.
Oh.
So sometimes it's just a type of propulsion to get you back to the station even.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah. All right, let's see. I think we're going to transition here now to some roller coaster technical terms.
Okay.
So, but these are very simple terms, but we do bring them up all the time.
Okay.
So, this first one is going to be what is a trim? And then once you answer that question, there's a second part to it.
Okay. You're talking about trim brakes, right?
Yes, and but a lot of times we just use the word trim.
Okay. I don't know if I know because are trim brakes like the mid course brake run? Like
No.
am I? No. Okay. I don't know that I know what trim brakes are. I think that's my phone a friend gave.
Okay, well then I'll ask the second part, and then I can go through. What is the difference between a trim brake and a brake run? Does that help you, or do I have to answer it?
Yeah, you're gonna have to answer it because
Okay, so a trim or a trim brake is one fixed piece of braking technology on a roller coaster, and all its purpose is to slightly slow down a coaster. So basically, a lot of the times these trim brakes are added after a roller coaster is built during the testing period. If it's
oh,
traveling too fast through a section, either the G forces are too intense or it's causing too much wear and tear on the train, they will put a trim brake on, and its only purpose is to slightly slow the train down.
okay,
So basically, a good example of this, you see them on B&M Hypers all the time. They'll put a trim brake like halfway through, and we call it a buzz kill because it slows the train down and it reduces the forces. Like there's the one on Fury 325 before the Helix section on that one airtime hill. You can feel the train just ever so slightly drag.
okay,
That was what we would call a trim.
okay,
And the difference between a trim brake and a brake run is a brake run is a set of brakes, not an individual brake, a set of brakes put together on a flat piece of track designed to fully stop a train. And now the reason I
okay.
say it's different than a trim brake is because a lot of brake runs still engage and slow the train down
Mm-hmm.
as part of a mid-course brake run.
Yep.
But the distinct difference is a mid-course brake run can completely stop a train and start a train back up from stop to finish the layout. That is the
Okay.
difference between a brake run and a trim brake. Also, you have the ending brake run to a roller coaster, which is designed to slow the train down to a complete stop once again and hold it there until the station is available for the train to roll forward through and unload.
That makes sense.
But that is the difference between a trim brake and a brake run. Is a trim brake is one individual brake designed to slow the train down, where a brake run is a flat fixed piece of multiple brakes designed to completely stop a roller coaster train.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you might not fare too good on these next questions. Then
Oh
there's a whole
gosh.
bunch of them. This one you'll probably be able to get though. Why are roller coasters called coasters? And we kind of touched on this already. And then the hint I have is they only use gravity.
Yeah. So the whole thing is it literally in the definition of the word coasting is that they are not under power. And Gabe did talk about this with the difference between an indoor coaster and a dark ride is that with a dark ride, the car or train or whatever you're sitting in is motorized throughout the entire layout. Where with a coaster, you literally are maybe propelled forward at some point and then you are left to coast. So the best example would be the difference between indoor coasters and dark rides. I can't think of like most anything we call a coaster obviously coast at some point. I guess you could think of like we said kind of the combinations of the two. I could also think of Primordial at Salt Lake
Yes.
City. So it has portions where it does coast. It is not under power. And then it has other sections that are definitely motorized. It controls your speed very precisely on how you're going through that ride so that you can interact with the different dark ride elements. So,
Yes. All right. So now this kind of blends into the next two questions. What is a coaster that has valleyed?
okay.
Why is this a big deal in shutting down a coaster? And sometimes it is a temporary shutdown. Other times it can eventually permanently close a roller coaster if it has a history of this issue.
Yes. Okay. So valleying is when a coaster gets stuck in the layout. It does not have enough power to make it through. And generally speaking, it will happen in the valley between two airtime hills or two elevated elements. So I think the best example I could use to describe this, and we've mentioned it with this ride before, is Erie Force One. So Erie Force One has a specific like operating temperature of at least 60 degrees. And basically, they've run into issues with this ride where it does valley. Now, the problem with this happening on a roller coaster is that they don't have any way to get that train back to the station. It like there's no way to like push it forward or like, it doesn't have any way to complete the layout. So a lot of the times what they have to do is they have to bring in a crane. Well, first of all, if there's anybody on the train, they have to evacuate said people and get the people out of the train first. And then they have to bring a crane in and physically lift the train off the track and then, either put it back in the station or something like that. I can imagine that it's a very expensive process to have this done. So if a coaster has a history of this, the park isn't going to like spend a whole bunch of money every single time this happens. And I, not to mention that bringing in the crane, I imagine that you can't just like do this while the park is open and you have people in the park. I imagine it's probably a thing that you have to do in your off hours or in the off season. So, moral of the story, if it keeps happening, it's very expensive to fix said problem. So, a park is not going to keep doing it continuously if it's a known issue.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing that I wanted to mention too is that if a roller coaster valleys while you're at an amusement park, you're probably not riding it that day. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's another big deal is that it is a thing that they can't just fix really
Nope.
quickly. So if you hear the word or the term vallied at an amusement park, now you know that is not a good thing for that roller coaster.
Nope.
Now this leads to another kind of term that, and now this is another one that I don't know if you're going to get, so it does come with a hint.
Okay.
What is a coaster that has stacked?
Oh.
Okay, and then there's two parts to this. Why can this also shut down a coaster temporarily? And the hint that goes along with it is what two block zones have to do with this term?
Oh, so okay, so I don't know what this is, but from the hint, I'm gonna guess it's when two trains run into each other or meet with each other. Because block zones, I do know this on a roller coaster. Block zones are, I guess I don't really know how to define it. On a roller coaster, block zones are a section of the ride where the train can be stopped in an emergency, is what I'm going to say. And with roller coasters, if a coaster has 4 block zones, it can run 3 trains because you want like a buffer zone in there. A lot of the times, a block zone will be the station, a block zone will be the lift hill because the lift hill can be stopped if it needs to. And then when we were talking about breaks before, if it is a break run in the middle of the coaster, what we call a mid course break run, if the train can be stopped there, that is another block zone. So I'm assuming that a stacked coaster is one where 2 trains have somehow come into contact with each other, which is obviously not a good thing and shouldn't happen on a modern roller coaster. A lot of the times I feel like the one of the what examples we talked about, oh my gosh, I cannot remember what episode it was. It was when I was talking about the Wizard and how there's been a couple of these, I was going to call it a bobsled coaster, but it's not a bobsled coaster. The type of coaster that the Wizard is. There was a previous clone of it at the California's Six Flags America when that's what it was called. And it was shut down because 2 trains collided in the station. So,
Yeah, so you're close. What you're talking about would actually be like called a collision.
okay.
Stacked is when multiple trains have to stop on the track. Now,
Oh.
most coasters traditionally only have like a block zone ending at like their final brake run.
Yep.
So it's not a huge deal, but there are a lot of coasters out there that feature multiple brake runs. And the term stacked is when they start stacking on each brake run. So it's actually the term stacked is actually safer than what a collision would be because
Okay.
that means the coaster is working properly.
Okay.
Basically, so either something happens in the station or something happens on the lift hill or something happens to where the coaster is kind of pausing in operation to the point where the trains are stopping safely. Now, the reason this is a problem is for two reasons. Roller coasters are designed to be continuously operated. It's how they design the layouts. You don't want to stack. It
Okay.
ruins the roller coaster experience if you stop
Yep.
halfway through it.
Yes.
The other reason is when it gets to a certain point, sometimes it will trip a safety switch in the roller coaster computer, and then you have to call like either an electrician or some kind of roller coaster maintenance man to come out and actually reset it
Oh,
before
dang.
you can dispatch the train to continue cycling. And
Yes.
that's why it can shut down a coaster temporarily, because if it happens too far into the roller coaster layout, it's actually an error code. There's certain roller coasters that are like known for it. A lot of times,
Oh,
most modern coasters don't have that feature anymore. It's just the ride operator can just dispatch a train, and then everything kind of does it automatically now.
okay.
But like the older ones, that when mid course brake runs were first becoming a thing, it would
Yep.
actually error out the roller coaster. And then you had to call somebody out to reset it, which could
Oh,
take,
jeez.
upwards of 20 minutes or so. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the term stacked, is basically,
Okay.
and that's why it has to do with block zones, is because that means the block zones are actually working properly. It's stopping the
Oh,
trains
okay.
before they glide,
Okay.
basically.
One thing I want to point out, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where this is actually slightly a good thing. I think of Maverick because I think
Oh
you told
yes.
me once is if the trains start to get a little bit close together, the second launch will actually stop you completely and then launch you. And so it's a little bit better of a launch
Yes.
if you stack a little
Maverick's
bit on that ride.
actually Yeah, Maverick's actually a really good example because of how many trains they actually run on the track. They can run upwards of like 6 or 7 trains
I was gonna say
because
it's
of
a
all of the
ridiculous
separate
number.
different block zones. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a really, really good example of coasters that could stack. Is if all of a sudden the like basically line of trains gets all the way back to that second launch, you're absolutely correct. It will completely stop you before the launch track because that is the end of the block zone for that section of roller
Yeah.
coaster. And that means all of the trains in front of you are starting to stack from the station.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, that is actually a really good example. That was a good job, Sam.
Yay.
All right, so how much time do we have left here? Holy cow, we only got 10 minutes, Sam.
I know.
Let's see
We
if
didn't think
there's
this was going to be an hour.
anything. I know. Let's see if there's anything that I want to for sure ask.
Okay.
We actually got through a good portion of the questions that I had.
Dang.
Let's see. Okay, so this one I definitely want to ask. What is ACE? ACE. What is ACE?
Oh, ACE. So ACE stands for American Coaster Enthusiasts. So, now that you asked me that, I know that they're an organization in America. Obviously, they're by their name are roller coaster enthusiasts. The way that we mention them all of the time is they designate ACE historical landmarks. And so they are roller coasters that have historical significance for one thing or another. I always think of Batman at Six Flags Great America has an ACE plaque for being the first inverted roller coaster. I believe there are 20 some odd coasters in the United States that have this designation. But in all honesty, besides that, I don't actually know what they do.
No? Here, I'll
No.
go to their website and actually see if I can
Okay.
find something quick. American
I do
Coaster.
know. I think I follow them because we have socials for the podcast, obviously. So like on Instagram, I believe I follow like Ace and Vacoma and Intimate and stuff. I do know that they do like go visit parks and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So the mission of American Coaster Enthusiasts is to foster and promote the conservation,
okay.
appreciation, knowledge, and enjoyment of the classic wooden roller coaster and the contemporary steel roller coaster, to create fellowship along its members and to
Ah,
promote the continued operation of roller coasters. So
that's
they're specifically a historic community is what they're trying to do is they're trying to promote coasters that have historical significance to the roller coaster world. They're all also a membership club. So like if I go to their thing, they have CoasterCon, national conferences, international trips. They do magazines and newsletters. They are a strong voice for roller coaster and amusement park preservation. So they're an organization that is trying to preserve some of these older wooden coaster or older coasters in general, I should say,
okay.
and stuff like that. But they also are a place where you can get memberships. I haven't looked too much into them because it's just like, if I have to spend money or something, then I'm
Yeah.
really not about it. But they are a very beneficial thing to preserving roller coasters, especially ones that are historical and near and dear to our hearts.
Okay, so as a side note here, another fun thing about log rides is it will tell you how many ACE landmarks you've ridden.
Yes, it
Um,
does.
According to log ride, at least, It says that they have 58 unique attractions, but some of these are racing coasters. So, like American Eagle is on here, and both sides are on here. Racer 75, both sides are on here. The Racer at Kings Island, both sides are on here. So, but according to my log ride, I have 43% completion.
You actually have more than I do.
Oh, really? Dang.
I have 40%. Yeah. I have 23 out of 58.
I was gonna say I have 25.
I wonder what are the two that you have that I don't.
Oh.
I'm looking now. Oh, Corkscrew at Silverwood. That's definitely one of them.
Oh.
Oh, Thunderbolt at Six Flags New England would be the
I
other one
just
that you
saw it at the
have.
same time you
Yep.
did. That's hilarious.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. We have like another 5 minutes here. This one will be really quick. What is a flat ride? I also use the term filler ride.
Yeah, so a flat ride, I would say, is, and well, I can't say anything that's not a coaster, but basically they have like a specific area that they stay in. Flat rides are obviously not roller coasters and they're not towers. The best examples I could think of is, and I know they're not all called this, but like scramblers, tilt-a-whirls, a lot of the like more carnival-y rides, they're generally speaking a lot smaller. Obviously, roller coasters have huge footprints. Even small roller coasters have huge footprints. Even indoor coasters have huge footprints. You should see the freaking building that has to go around Flight of Fear. With flat rides, they're a lot of the times they're a lot smaller. They're better for kids if you're at these parks. And Gabe, I think what he means by filler rides is they're the rides that you put in between the coasters.
Yes, that's exactly what I say.
So
they fill in the empty spots in the amusement park between roller coasters.
Exactly. So a lot of the times when me and Gabe go to a park, we skip them. So would you consider drop towers flat rides?
Yes. So drop towers, sky towers, stuff like that, those are also considered flat rides. Now, like a log flume or a boat ride, something like that, that would definitely not be a flat ride. That is another classification of rides, usually considered water type amusement attractions, or like sometimes we just say log flume as a general classification of a ride. I'm trying to think. So then you have also the term called transportation rides. So those are rides that would take you across an amusement park. So like sky rides or trains or monorails, stuff like that. That's not a flat ride or a roller coaster. That is what you would call a transportation ride. Its main purpose is to transport large amounts of people across the amusement park.
Okay, cool.
So just a little thing there. I think I have one more. Do you want to talk about restraints?
Sure.
Okay, so what is a restraint? And then what would the difference between a lap bar and an over the shoulder restraint?
Oh, okay. So restraints obviously and just in general are what keep you in the roller coaster. And I say that because me and Gabe have talked about roller coasters that have seatbelts, but in reality, seatbelts are a little less of a restraint and more of a sizing device to make sure that you're going to fit in said roller coaster. And they are a little bit of extra safety if for whatever reason a restraint did fail on you. The restraint, generally speaking, is some kind of bar that comes around your lap, or with the case of over the head restraints, they have some kind of like shoulder piece. And I say that because sometimes over the shoulder restraints will just have bars that connect to like metal bars that don't actually touch you. They just are the connecting piece for the bar that then sits on your lap, where you have some, like, I think of, is it called the comfort collar on the B&M wing coasters, where it's like this rubbery piece that like actually sits on your shoulders. There's not really much difference to say in that. I guess we could talk about buzz bars, because we talk about those all the time. Buzz bars are a restraint where it's usually just like one straight bar that just comes down to a certain point and then sits there. It does not like ratchet down to your specific height that you need. A lot of the times they're on older Woodies and not quite as intense Woodies, but I think the exception to that would be Phoenix at Knoebels. Go ride that before they switch out the restraints, because I'm convinced it's going to happen.
Yes. And then I have one more question. I'm actually going to combine two of these questions, though. What is a coaster manufacturer? And what is the difference between a coaster manufacturer and an amusement park ownership? Because they are two very different things.
Okay, so a roller coaster manufacturer is literally the company that I would say both designs and builds it, because there are certain roller coaster companies that build coasters but didn't necessarily design them. I think of some of the coasters we will say are in-house builds are because they were actually designed by the in-house team, but we've talked a lot about different roller coaster manufacturers, and there's a lot of them. We have Arrow, we have Schwarzkopf, we have PTC. Gabe mentioned a bunch of the wooden ones. Roller like park ownership, I guess I guess I don't really know. Gabe might have to explain this. I mean, a roller coaster company might design the coaster. I feel like it might be one of those things where a roller coaster company will have certain ride models and they'll kind of like own the rights to that model, where a roller coaster, like an actual park, will own that specific roller coaster.
Yeah, basically what I was kind of looking for was a coaster manufacturer is basically the supplier,
Okay.
and then the like ownership group or the people that own the amusement park would basically be the customer.
Okay.
They're the people who are requesting these roller coasters, who own the actual amusement parks and the ground they're being built on. They're
Okay.
the financial backing behind the amusement parks and the day-to-day operations and stuff like that. They hire all the employees and stuff like that, where a coaster manufacturer is more of a supplier. All
Okay.
they do is basically design, engineer, and construct roller coasters for the amusement parks, but some people don't realize that they are two very different parties.
Yes.
And that's kind of why I just threw that question in there.
Okay.
So, other than that, the only other one that we had was from one of your people. What is an RMC Iron Horse conversion? And with that, that should wrap up our episode.
Okay. We call it an RMC Iron Horse conversion because that is the technical term. If you go on RMC's website, that will be one of the, like, what do they call it? Services that they offer. Now, me and Gabe will oftentimes shorten that to saying when a coaster was RMC'd. We use RMC basically as like the verb to describe what's happening to this coaster. But basically, as a way to save money for parks, RMC decided that they could reuse the concrete footers of wooden roller coasters. So, if you ever go to a wooden roller coaster, if you look, the wooden supports will oftentimes be attached to some kind of concrete footer. And basically what RMC does is they use those and design a coaster on top of it. And a lot of the times they'll kind of pay homage to whatever wooden coaster was there before. I think, and we could go on and on about all of the RMCs. Like there's Iron Gwazi, which used to be just Gwazi. We have Wildcat's Revenge, which just used to be just Wildcat. So when we say coaster has been RMC'd, they've taken down the old wooden coaster, reused sort of like the layout section and the footprint that it originally took up to make a new hybrid roller coaster. That's the other thing, is they will oftentimes be wooden supports but will have iron track, and they usually have inversions. They're usually a lot more intense, but again, they sort of kind of like, still honor the old wooden coaster that they
Yes.
replaced. So
Yeah. All right. That is our episode then for roller coaster lingo in general terms. I think we actually did a really good job.
I think
It
we
was
did
good.
too. You
Yeah.
helped
You
me a
only,
lot, so thank you.
well, I just wanted to make sure everything is covered.
Yes. So with
Yeah.
that, getting into our schedule,
We
because
only have 4 episodes left, Sam.
yeah, I know. I was just about to say we're coming to the end of our season. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm glad we made it here, guys. I know there were some bumps along the road. We
A
really
lot
lived
of
up.
bumps. A lot of small ones this year, not a lot of big ones, but
Yeah, exactly. So we really lived up to our name of consistently inconsistent. But our next 2 episodes are going to be battles episodes. Our first one is Beyond Vertical Drops, which is going to be a fun episode. And then we're going to have one that is Coasters That Only Have One Moment, which is going to be another fun one. But
yes.
then the one that I'm super excited for, Gabe's super excited for, hopefully all of you are super excited for, is our season finale. It's going to be a 2-part Coasters 101 episode on the namesake of our podcast, Coasters wars. So
yes, and we touched on it once again in this episode, just a little bit.
exactly.
I specifically made it a point not to include any questions about the specific topic because I knew we were going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
So, if you are wondering what the Coasters Wars was and all of what it entails, listen in to our season finale. It's going to be a 2-part episode extravaganza. I
Mhm.
will say this. The last time that we did a 2-parter, it turned out to be 2 of our best episodes that we have ever done.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be some of our best podcasting, honestly.
I agree with you. Not to mention that we're also very excited to talk about this topic.
Oh, yes.
And what's funny is we planned on doing this last season, and then of course it just didn't work out for us. So I think I have all the research done for it. I just have to go back through and
I
read
don't. I definitely have to at least put a little bit of something together.
it. That's all right. So
Yeah.
with that,
Some planning will go into that episode. Let's just put it that way.
Gabe's gonna actually make an effort, guys. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
To be fair, you did in this one. You had to write the questions. So I'll give you that. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and join us next week for Beyond Vertical Drops.
And we hope you all have a great day.